Good afternoon. Let's get started. How's your exam going for Dr. Anderson's class? Right. Okay, so some items related to your calendar. The disadvantage of going second in the day is that section 1 makes all of the decisions about your destiny. But I think you're going to like it. So, after a class vote, we've decided that next Tuesday there shall be no class. Are you in favor? Yes. No. So what we had originally scheduled was about 5 different failed project presentations on next Tuesday. So instead of doing that, we'll push that to the 12th, so the end of the semester. So those won't be for a while. You can take that day and get in another hour and 15 minutes to work on your course project, prepare for your presentations, etc. That doesn't help you with the rough draft. Now, people have been asking me about the rough draft. The rough draft is not graded. So if you have, I don't want you to do less work than you otherwise would, but even if you only gave me an outline, it's just my opportunity to say back to you, yep, you're about 6 sections short. You just have titles there. But at the beginning of the week before a project is due each year, there's always some people who have completed the project by Monday, and there are some people who have barely begun the project on Monday. And so for those that have, completed the project, basically, I can look over it and I can say, hey, here's some refinements you can make to maybe get full 100% points on there. For those that haven't made very much progress, I guess it's their come to Jesus moment or whatever, and we just say, yes, you still need to do your entire project this week. And all in all, everything happens, everything gets done. My hope is that you guys don't stress yourselves out and delay till the very last moment to do this stuff. I hope that you put in some progress and some work over the course of the semester so you don't stress at the last minute and have to cram. But ultimately, it was your choice. Do you have any questions on the milestone or the project? Yeah.
So you said that you were a TA, right? So we set that up just emailing them or
Yes, please reach out to them by email or Slack and say, hey, is there any time I can meet with you? I want to be kind of the fallback. If it doesn't work out to meet with them, you can schedule to meet with me. The thing is if there's too many people, then I get overwhelmed. There's not enough me. And so I can't meet with everybody, but I would like to if I could in a perfect world. Worst case, if you don't end up being able to meet with me or the TAs, then you can just send a copy of it, either a link or the actual thing at the last minute, and we will look it over that way and give you some feedback. Pardon me?
Are you grading it?
The milestone is not formally graded. It's just given a review and you get some feedback.
The end one.
The end one, the TAs will be grading that. Okay, so another thing to think about are the presentations that are coming up. In the milestones document, there's a column for when you're supposed to present. I think most of you probably know where that's at. But if I'm over here, sorry, the font's super small. But if I go back to early in the semester, we have the project milestone sign-up sheet there. And if I open that, There's section 1, there's section 2. The third column there says presentation date. So that's when you are scheduled to present on your project. It's just literally a verbal representation of what you've written in your report that you're going to be turning in. So it should be pretty easy to go through. You do not have to. I'm looking at the numbers here. Notice in the section above you that the numbers are mixed up. You do not have to present on that particular date if you can convince somebody on another date to switch with you. So I don't know what that's going to take, if it's going to require you buying them lunch or whatever else it is, but you guys are allowed to negotiate among yourselves and switch days. I don't really care. It doesn't have to go in order. So, another thought as it relates to that. Well, let's just count real quick. So on a given day, like the 14th, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 75 minutes of class, 6 presentations, which means if we do about 10 to 12 minutes per presentation, we can get through all of them. For that reason, if we go over to the document that describes the project, there's a rubric for presentations, and the key part here, highlighted in yellow, is that if you're in the 10-12 minutes range, you don't get any deductions, but you start getting deductions if you go outside of that range. Generally, we don't get any deductions. So I believe that you guys will all fall in line with the time requirement. James?
So are we not doing our failed project presentations because we don't have class?
When are you scheduled?
Oh, it's 7, never mind, ignore me.
Okay. Okay. As far as your presentation goes, the paper itself roughly matches to the categories of our class. There's planning, analysis, some reflection as part of analysis. So in addition to just stating what's part of your project, what other systems, you also do a little reflection on what's wrong with it, and then you propose a solution to do it better. That's exactly what you're going to do as part of your 10-minute presentations. Hi, we're team number 2. We did a project on Adobe. Adobe does, among other things, graphic software. They had a problem in their accounting department. Let me show you some diagrams and some processes of how things work in their diagramming department. Here's our analysis or impression of what's wrong with that and where they can improve. And now I'd like to show you some designs of how we would actually improve those areas where they are short. Here's some diagrams. Here's some mock-ups of the new system. That's your presentation. So, any questions? Sweet. You probably don't have any questions about the project planning lecture from last time, correct? Thinking no, right? Trying to think about, oh, I know what I was going to hit next. How many people have, I don't expect you to have, but how many people have read chapter 12 on UI and prototypes at this point? All right. 5, 6 people, that's about double the last section, so. Yeah. You guys have more time. You have a couple extra hours in the day to potentially. You work. Okay. I'm hearing you loud and clear. You're telling me you're better. All right. We'll just go with that. We won't let them hear that. They won't be happy. Okay. I'm not going to do a formal lecture on the contents of chapter 12. I trust that you'll read it and you'll have a good time. I will hit a couple highlights at this point though. So in here I have an example of what requirements might look like for a GUI in text form. And the point is that it's not very fun to read visual requirements in a text way or a textual way. And so if I were to scroll down, here's a mock-up of what was described earlier. So getting to the point of a picture is worth 1,000 words. So as it relates to design, it's very nice to have visual designs as something to build off of. Another thing that's discussed in here is the difference between low fidelity and high fidelity prototypes. So here's some sketches on paper representing, so a low fidelity prototype is typically black and white, shows the content and the structure of your application. It could be in a digital program, or it could be on a piece of paper. But the idea of a prototype compared to a mock-up is that a prototype is interactive. So that means we literally could take a stack of paper and put it in front of a user and say, okay, how would you log into the application? Or what would you click on to look at the users? And then you look at me strangely and you push the button on the piece of paper, and then I switch it for another piece of paper and show you the other page. But it is kind of a cheap way for people to design applications and get feedback and iterate over early designs. So that would be low fidelity prototyping. And then high fidelity and you can do low fidelity prototyping in software as well, like Adobe XD. And then high fidelity prototyping just means you add in the graphics and the color, and it's also interactive. So again, like Adobe XD would give you this as well as the previous one, except this one happens to be in color. And then one of the last items in here is about color theory. Everyone who does graphic design in this world that's worth their salt knows about color theory. And here is one aspect of color theory. The fact that different colors have meaning. So yellow conveys warmth and creativity. Red conveys passion and aggression. Green is fresh and natural. From looking at these things, if you were to design a bank website, therefore, or if you're a designer who's aware of these that's going to design a bank website, which colors might you select? Okay. Most likely something like black or blue, because they have things like trust in them or wealth. If you'll notice, food companies like Taco Bell, they typically have colors in them like yellow, green, orange, because those are associated with the food colors. So now your world will be forever altered. As you look at different businesses and the color schemes that they choose, they typically have chosen their color schemes because they relate to something positive as in conjunction with their business. I guess another way of saying this is that if you were a restaurant, you probably wouldn't be picking brown, black as the choices for your restaurant. Those aren't going to be your Taco Bell colors. Yeah?
Is this pretty standard across cultures, or is this mostly like Western?
That's a fantastic question. Why do you ask that question first, by the way?
Because a lot of companies are global, especially like online companies, and so you don't want to have a color that's offensive, or like, I know in certain cultures, like you don't wear white, like Fred doesn't wear white because that's a sign of like death. Like,
Yes.
Asian culture and that kind of stuff.
Yes, so I really like the question, you're spot on. That it's widely known and accepted that there are certain meanings for colors in the United States, but in other colors like Asian countries, red can convey something different than it does here. So I don't know how they're sorting that out exactly, but it is something good to be aware of, that something that means something that's widely accepted here is not necessarily widely accepted in the rest of the world. So you might not get as much leverage out of those Taco Bell colors or something else in other places. But that is absolutely correct. So somebody asked me last section a question that I could not answer, so I don't know why I'm bringing it up. They said, how did they come up with this? And I said, I don't know. Every single design book has this stuff in there. Like, everybody knows this. Now, where did they come up with this originally? I don't know. I don't know if they made it up or if they've done research with people in marketing. I don't know. But I'm sure we could just do a quick little Google search and find that.
Comment?
Yes.
Wikipedia says that it was like in 1435,
Really? Okay. So this is old, really old school stuff. I didn't know it could go back that far. Another thing that designers are aware of are warm colors, cool colors, and also complements. They're very much, designers know a lot or are very aware of, you know, the saturation, the hues, the contrasts in colors. And so here's a book that I have right here. It says, here's a set of colors that you might, if you want to have friendly as your color palette for your website, then here are a bunch of different colors in combination that you could use on your website. Let's go to another page. This one says rich. So they have a photo, and then they have a bunch of examples of palettes that you would use to convey richness in your application. And so you can, Adobe has a website, I may have linked to it in the chapter, where you can, in the olden days we used to buy books that would do this, that had software where you could get complementary color patterns in there for building your apps. Nowadays there's like Adobe CC or something like that. There's a free color site out there that you can create all the color combinations. So they'll give you a palette depending on what you're looking for. This one says refreshing, so a group of colors. So to some degree, designers are magical. They'll put together 3 or 4 colors that work. Well, this is how they do that. There's just an established history of this kind of stuff, depending on which category you're looking into. So, fun, cool stuff. All right, any questions about color before I move on? All right.
What's your favorite color?
I want to answer like Monty Python, like, you know, blue, no, green. Ah! Guess I like blue. I don't.
You guess. That's hard.
I strongly prefer blue, but
I'm convinced.
but I embrace many colors. Okay. Something else I wanted to talk about is my work experience and some of the portfolio of work products that I have as it relates to designing applications for people. So we've talked before about, you know, should I do this? What's your problem? And then what are potential solutions to your problem? So I'm going to show some examples of things that hit on those thoughts. They're of varying quality, but I'll just show you different things from my work background. So going back to the year 2000, we were trying to compete. This actually was in color. I don't know why this is in black and white here. There's an old version of Internet Explorer. I was looking to see if it was in Netscape or not. But we were trying to be Groupon. And so this is an example of a web-based coupon that we were offering to people. Here's another example of this. One of the challenges we had back then was that email readers weren't all HTML capable, and so the emails we would send out to people looked like this. You know, fish sandwich special. Click on this link to get 20% off, that sort of thing. So if they clicked on the link that came in their text-only compatible email reader, they would see one of these coupons that they could then print off and bring into a store. So early design work there. Another company that I worked for, we designed products that were integrated with eBay. And so we would put together some flow charts related to how we would get our users and integrate them with things. And so this was just some of the planning material we did. One of the things that happened with us, and that is common in many industries, is we would create a product and then we would rebrand it for different companies. So one company I worked for was in the banking industry. So we would create a banking interface for somebody like Bank of America, and then we would just reskin it for Wells Fargo. So just put different colors on there. So similar kind of thing with this business. We had these eBay integrated product websites, but then we partnered with different companies, and so we went from the name Operation Dropship for one customer to BidFrog for another one. And so this was just kind of our work for how we were going to reskin the website. And anyway, these were just a bunch of assets that were associated with reskinning that particular website. Another company I did work for was Pepsi. So Pepsi wanted to have what we call enterprise search, so their own personal internal version of Google. And so to teach them how enterprise search worked, there were some diagrams about the architecture of how that functioned. And then there were some lists of requirements, examples of how navigation works in enterprise search. And then we started going with, this is how it's going to look after we rebrand and build this into your internal websites so that you could do search for videos and images, text, other things like that within your company. So there was anyway, it seems like it goes on and on. A lot of requirements there for the thing that we were about to do. And then let me show, I'm going to bring you to this last one now. Oh, it's not in that folder. Let me go to another folder. There's a local company here. It's called Circe Dynix. They're a library software. They provide library software to all the big governments around the world and around the country. And I was brought in to be their consultant, like you might be someday. And what I was told was, A, we need a website. B, it needs to be in ASP, so Visual Basic precursor to .NET stuff. That's all I had. There's a lot that I had to learn and do before, in going from that explanation to what I eventually delivered. So one of the things that I did early on that connects to this class was I went through the company and I interviewed the functional areas that were going to be impacted by the web application. And I created a data flow diagram. I wasn't an instructor at the time. I was just some graduate of this program. I was less than a graduate of this program because technically I didn't graduate. I dropped out halfway through the master's program, but I'd taken all these technical classes. So, and just one day out of the blue, I thought, oh boy, I really need this stuff, and so I started using it. So here's a diagram of how one portion of their organization worked, and then here is some of the notes I had related to interviewing them. So unstructured information that became structured information. Here's a diagram I created of another portion with the narrative, the unstructured information going with it. Here's another diagram of another portion of their organization, and then with text that went along with it. Also, as part of my fact-finding, the analysis portion of my project, I took screenshots of all of the applications that they were using, all the data sources they were using. So they had a bunch of different programs. This one is Access. They also had Excel spreadsheets, ACT, a customer contact database, lots of different things. So I took screenshots of all those things. They also had forms that they were using as part of their internal processes, on and on. Okay, so after I had done interviews, after I had diagrammed out how they did their work, after I had gotten screenshots and forms of everything that they used as part of their work, now I was ready to assess where could they be better, and subsequently I was ready to move on to the next phase, which was what would be a solution for their problem. And their problem was that they had a bunch of different teams that were all working on something related to customers, but the data was all in different formats. It was in Excel, it was in ACT, it was in Access, it was in other proprietary forms. And so I looked at all that and I figured out how a website could solve their problems. So, after going through the analysis phase, I went on to the design phase. Alright. So, this is, I had not developed anything yet. How many slides does it say that there are in the lower left-hand portion of the page? It's a little small, 133. So, having taken all that information that I'd gotten from them, and by the way, I didn't just do it once. I did my diagrams. I went back to the business users, and I said, okay, is this flow diagram that I have here, does this accurately reflect how you did their job? If there were any incorrectness in there, any problems, we corrected it. So it wasn't just one and done. I actually validated that I had gotten it right. Okay, after that, I created a solution conceptually. So as part of this, so these are the mock-ups that I did of the application that I was proposing to build. The links over here on the left side represented really the different work groups that they had in the organization. And so within this slide deck, there's about 15 slides per link there, or 15 slides per work group. So what I would do, and it's mainly data entry and then reporting that comes back out of it again. And what I would do is I would sit down with a business user and I'd say, hey, here's the 15 slides that I'm proposing to put together in an application. If I built this for you, would this meet your needs? And we would go through a couple rounds that way, and once all of the groups said yes, if you build this, this will make all of our lives better, then I was ready to go and actually create the application. But in addition to the visual aspect of design, there's also the architectural aspect of design from the code perspective. So once again, before I had written a single line of code, I created this document. So I called this my technical specifications. What I did was I create for the different areas, so if you recall, there were links off to the left-hand side that represented different user groups. So for each of those different user groups, I created a block, a table of information related to the scripts that I would write for them. So the way that I was organizing this was, I guess, comparable to the pages. If there were 15 pages associated with a particular user group, there were probably also 15 scripts, the equivalent of like a .cs file or .html file that I needed to create for them. So let me go down a little bit here and say, okay, in the commissions area of the website, these are all of the web pages that would be created over here on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side would be the URL that you would get to them from, and in the middle was an explanation of what that particular page would do. So the RASB pages were a combination of just HTML as well as logic for retrieving and displaying information. So I did that for every single page that would be on the website in this document. And you can see it went on and on. I had not physically created a single page for them yet in code. I conceptually created it. Next step, I knew I was going to need databases to back up everything. So here are the list of tables that I knew that I would need to create my application. And then here are the details, the specifications, the table definitions for every single table I was going to create along with their names. And anyway, you can see like in one of these last ones, I've got like, this looks like 6 foreign keys and a primary key for a table called writer request. So, impressions? Thoughts? After this, I was ready to code. Yeah?
How long did it take you to do all this?
It probably took me about, I think it took me about 4 weeks. And given work days, that means about 20 work days. So after about 20 work days, I was ready to sit down and code. And I coded for the next 3 months, and then I delivered it to them. Yes?
And this is all by yourself?
Yes. Yeah. Oftentimes, in this world, you're working in teams. This was just one of those odd situations where I was brought in as a consultant. They said, solve this problem. So I was just very methodical about how I was gonna go about it. I wanted to make sure I understood their problem, that I had got approval on what I was gonna build for them before I built it, and then I made sure it was well architected, and then I built it. So. Other thoughts or questions? Okay. So now what was and here's the printed version of what I just showed you. I compiled it all into one book, and I gave it to them at the end of the project along with this disc, which had all of the source code on there, all the documentation, all the planning stuff, everything was there. Now, this stuff, while it was great in the moment while I was building, and it could be used for support later on, so people would know that are coming to maintain the application what was done. I'm sure all of this would be quite helpful. If I want to be practical about this, what was the purpose of all of this at the end of the day? It was just the means to an end. The end was the application that worked really well for them. This was just all to get us there. Similar to that, this is the integrative exercise that we did in my year. So you guys will be doing something similar in December. So same kind of idea. Well, in your case, what you're going to do, comparable to my project, is you're going to sit down, you're going to be given a project at the beginning of a week, and you're going to have 30 or so hours, 32 hours, give or take a few hours, to work as a team to put together something. You're going to go through the steps. You're going to do a cost-benefit analysis. You're going to do diagrams that analyze the problem. You're going to propose ways to do it better. You'll put in there and then you'll do some design work. You'll put in some recommendations for how it looks, and also design work in architecturally, like ERD diagrams and stuff like that. One thing that we've done in recent years that we didn't used to do is we actually have you not only spec it out, but build it that same week too. So you guys are better than I ever was. Any questions? Yes?
So during the index week, can we access TA's help?
Can you ask TAs for help? What do you think you need help with?
Everything.
Everything. We'll tell you later what you can and can't do. The goal on our end is that you get the prompt and then we don't hear from you until you turn it in on Friday morning. That's our goal. There are some exceptions to that, but we really don't want to hear from you. We want you guys to go away. Yeah, no offense. We want to see if you can solve the problem, and so we don't want to get questions like, hey TA, how do I do an activity diagram? Like, come on, you should know that by now. Or should I use the activity diagram or the data flow diagram? That's the point of the project, is for you to figure that out. So that's what I mean by we don't really want to hear from you.
I guess I would have like TAs to review maybe pieces.
Oh, can they validate your solutions and stuff like that? I don't think that's in the spirit of what we're looking for. I think you should just keep it in your group and then present it at the end. Yeah. It's a great idea though. If it weren't the integrative exercise, I'd say absolutely. But in this case, I don't know, it could be tricky if we have, close to 40 groups, 36 groups, whatever it is, all hitting the TAs up at every single step going, what about this? What about this? What about this? That'd be a little crazy. Might overwhelm them. So they'll be busy enough grading all of them afterwards. So yes.
The TAs grade them?
Yeah, we actually get TAs from all the different classes, and they get together and they'll probably grade different portions of it respectively, and then come together with a composite score. Maggie?
Will we be able to talk to someone about clarifications?
Yeah, we allow a little bit of that, but usually what happens is it gets out of hand. It's a little weird being on our end. Like, why? We get the weirdest questions. So after a while, we get tired of asking the weird questions, and we say no more questions. That's usually how it goes down. Hopefully, I'm not being too transparent there. It's not that we don't mind questions. It's just we get tired of bad questions or needless questions. What?
Now you don't mind questions, because you don't like.
Now that you'd have to see the questions. You'd have to be sitting in our shoes, and eventually you're just like, oh man, we can't. Anyway, that's just the spirit of it. Eventually we get to be like, okay, we don't want questions to begin with. Hopefully it's clear. People ask questions because they don't want to miss any points, and eventually it gets a little weird. And so we're like, okay, it's got to stop. That's usually how that goes down. Hopefully it doesn't make people feel bad. Okay, one thing I want to note. So these designs that I put together, this was back in 2001. Before today, I had not opened these up again. And yet I think that even today I could give these over to a developer, and if they had to develop this from scratch, they could say, yeah, I understand what you're asking for, and I could build that. Even if they didn't have my technical specifications, they could just take the visual design and run with it. One of the things I like about PowerPoint as a mock-up tool is that we can use something today to build off of that I built 15 years ago. And I'll bet you if you built something in PowerPoint today, that 15 years from now, you could still open up PowerPoint, use PowerPoint, and see it accurately from which to build. We had a guest speaker recently come in, and they talked about the new technologies as the things that the cool kids use. Let's go ahead and open up Figma right now and work in there. This is a technology that the cool kids are using. The downside to the cool technologies is that a year or two from now, people might not be using them anymore. So for right now, they do some amazing things that are beyond the capabilities of PowerPoint, but there's usually a new flavor of the week. So a couple years from now, you might not want to be working in Figma. Some of the other key tools there are InVision, UXPin, Sketch. They all kind of function similarly, but who knows if they're going to be the big leaders in a couple of years. Okay, so let's create a new page. Figma. All right, over in the upper right-hand corner there, it says New File. Last time, we had Connor, our guest speaker, do the e-commerce mobile application. We imported that. We had a bunch of assets, and we started messing with it. If you do a mock-up or a prototype for your class project, then you might want to know how to start from scratch as opposed to getting all of the assets provided for you ahead of time. So let's discuss that right now. So I click on New File, and here's my board to work with. If I scroll over to the upper left right there, it says Frame. That little mark there. If I click on it, then over on the right-hand side appears a bunch of different categories: phone, tablet, desktop. Let's start off with the phone. So if I open up that Twisty, I click on iPhone X. Then in the middle of the page appears a canvas upon which I could start making an iPhone screen mock-up. I actually want to do a couple of these, so I'm going to use my little trackpad and zoom out a little bit. I'm going to click on this again. Frame, iPhone X. That's right there. Okay. If I click on any of these and it's highlighted in blue, then I can also go over there to the left-hand column and I can change its name. So I'm going to call this the, I'll call it the login page, and we'll have that precede the home page. So we'll have a login page. Oops. Stop. I just nested them on the side. Now I want to unnest them.
Just drag it to the left.
Drag it to the left? It's not working. Okay, yeah, that's right. Maybe I'll just undo enough times. There we go. That works. There we go. I just wanted to switch their order. Okay, the other one, instead of calling it login, I want to call it home. So my idea here is that on my application, I'm going to have a login page and a home page. Okay, so now I can scroll, I can zoom in a little bit. For my login page, I want it to be kind of a splash page. So let's start putting something on there. There's not a lot of tools in the toolbar I'm going to go over to Shape Tools, and in that drop-down menu, I'm going to select a rectangle. So let's grab a rectangle and drop that over my login page. And let's have a little bit of fun, live wild, and say, I don't know what the theme of my application is going to be. I will let fate pick for me. So I'm going to click on my box. I'm going to right-click. Last time we imported the Unsplash plugin. If you need other plugins, you can go down to Manage Plugins, and it'll bring up that interface to import that. So we'll just go to Unsplash right now. And I can do a category, but let's live on the wild side. Click Insert Random. Looks like cars. We're going to be doing a car website. You guys can do your own application. Okay, some of the other things that we're going to need on here. Let's give it some type of title. So I'm going to grab the text from up there and drag it on down. Create a text box. And I want my font here to be white, bless you. So in my color picker, I'll try to get a white color. And with that, what shall be the name of this? Something drivers. Limo drivers. Limo drivers. Group. All right, that's too small. So I'm going to go over to the right-hand side there and find where I can change the font size. Try and get it looking a little bit better. Bold. Okay, so now I've got a name there. If this is kind of my login page, I'm going to need some boxes now to log in. So what other random pictures did you guys get?
Cabin.
A cabin?
Mountain biking.
Mountain biking. Ah, the mountain biking users group. I like that. All right, so let's grab a rectangle there and drop it down here. What I want to do is I want to have a username and password box. Something that you can do when most of these design programs is hold down either Alt or Option and click on an asset that's already on the page, and it will make a copy of that. So that's what I just did to make a second box. Although before I did that, I probably should have done something else. One thing I wanted to mention also is getting back to that whole idea of color harmony. We want all the colors in our pages to be harmonious. Oftentimes what I'll do is take something like what's going to be my input box. I'll go over to my fill option there, click on it, and then click this eyedropper tool. And what I want to do is I want to go over to the actual image itself and pick out something in the image that I can use as the color for my component that's on the page. F1 ED for me. I'm going to go to the other box and give it the same color.
Can you go back to how you got the color from that?
How did I get the color? Well, I'm going to do another one. These will be my text boxes. So let me do my button, and it's going to be the same idea. I'm going to draw this on here. It's going to be my login button. And I go over to the fill icon right there, click on it, and then in that area, in addition to selecting lots of different colors, I can also do the little color picker, and then I just mouse that over any part of the image, and it keeps on changing the hexadecimal code for the color that's going to be there. So I want to pick some complementary color for my login button.
How do you say you copied the rectangle?
How do you copy the rectangles?
Alt.
Yeah, either Alt or Option, and then just drag something. Okay, so I need some text. Bless you. Now in the real world, our buttons don't tend to look like this. Everything's curvy these days. So like you saw last time, I'll go on the right-hand corner there, and I'll I'll increase my radius. Actually, I don't like the gray, it doesn't stand out very much. I probably need a lighter color. But by increasing the radius, I've got something that looks more like a real button. I'm also going to need some text. Well, looks like I'll need some dark text up there and some white text down there. So I'm going to go up to my text tool up at the top and draw over this first one. And it shows me that my text color is going to be black, so I'll run with that. So I'll just write username. Let's do that again. Maybe I'll do my little copy trick here. Option, oops. And then I'm going to want another one on top of my login box. I know its color is going to need to be something fairly light. And I'll say log in. Obviously I could do more than this, but it gives you the idea of how this works. Now let's say that I have a logged in page and I want to have it carry on the theme of driving. So I'm going to take another rectangle and drop it onto the bottom portion of this screen. Could be the bottom, could be the top, I don't know. I'm going to right click on there, plugins, unsplash, and I'll type in car. All right, I see some odometers there that came up for me. So now my interior page is looking good. Let's just say I needed a list of users, or I wanted a list of users on this page for some reason. I will grab the ellipse, the circle. Oops. Put that on the page, and I'm going to use my Alt option to create a few of those. And then I want to put some images in here. So pretend this is kind of like a social site, and I want people's faces in there. So I've highlighted this. I'm going to right click, plugins, unsplash, and I'm going to type in people, or I should say person. Yeah. All right.
That one.
This guy?
No, the girl on the right.
That girl?
Yeah.
All right. So,
Very serious.
that's, yes. So,
You can tell she cares about your safety.
yes. She's even going to have one of those little hats. You know? Okay. And, and if I was going to carry on with this, I could, put some text in there, carry, whatever, and continue to build out the mock-up for my site. And then, okay, so I've been doing design so far. Over in the upper right, we have where it says prototype. Prototype is where we add in the interactions. So if I click on prototype, and if I've done this correctly at this point, if I click on one of my screens, like login, it turns blue when I hover over it. Or I'm just going to hover over it right now, and it creates that white circle with a blue exterior. I'm going to grab onto that little white circle, drag it over to the next window until it turns blue. And now, oops, actually, I didn't want to do it that way. Hold on, undo, Control Z. I want to click on this login button here. There we go. I've highlighted the login button because I'm in prototype. I've got this little interaction feature here. I'm going to click on that white circle, drag over to the other page, and now it's connected. And now I could do a variety of things. I could click share and send it to my phone as a way to preview it there, or I could preview it in my web browser by clicking on that little play button in the upper right where it says present. So I shall click on that. my image. Last time the image showed up after 2 or 3 seconds, but this one's not showing up at all. It's a feature. No, it's a bug. Anyway, I don't know why the image didn't show up. That's a bug. But but I can mouse over here, click on login, and it goes to the next page as expected. So this image showed up. I don't know what the problem with the other page was. But it even looks like an iPhone 10. So now each of you have some type of different thing that you've developed. Super awesome. Okay, so the big idea here is that this icon up there that says frame is how you select different things on the right-hand side for different canvases, for different platforms. I'm going to scroll out a little bit here and pretend, now I'm going to move on to making a website that again will have some random theme associated with it. So instead of phone in the upper right, so I zoomed out, I'm going to go to desktop, and I'm going to select desktop 1440 by 1024. So I added that to my page. So again, this could be the home page, it could be a sub page. I'm going to click on it, and over on the left-hand column, give it a page. Maybe I'll call it website home page for me. All right, let's make some other themed website. I'm going to add a rectangle to the top of this. And I shall right-click, unsplash. All right, let's see what kind of random fan site we will be creating. Ooh, outdoors. Okay, so you could also use something like this to make something that you're going to print out, a flyer. Okay, so I want to put some words on here. So for me, you guys will have to make up your own words. I'll put a text box there, make it nice and big. Tim Bonogus Hikers Group. We don't really have a lake up there, do we? No. Anyway, good enough. I kind of have the same thoughts as I do before. Notice as I'm editing this that I don't have any toolbar on the right-hand side. That's because I'm still in prototyping mode. So I'm going to go back to design. And now I want to change the color of my font. And again, I'm going to use that color picker. Maybe pick something out of the water there, that nice turquoisey color. It doesn't show up quite as nice as I would like, but it's functional. Maybe I'll add in a login button of some sort. Another thing I'll mention is that with these shapes, if you double click on them, you can change how they look. So obviously you can expand and go in and out, grabbing the corners, but if you double click on them, then you can grab their corners and change things. So maybe this could end up being our logo. If I wanted to actually make shapes, there's another thing you can do by overlaying things. Like let's just say, for example, I wanted to make a wrench. Kind of an odd thing. Ooh, you know, actually I want to show you one more thing. Okay, while I'm busy manipulating this shape, imagine if I want to turn it into a wave. Notice up here there's this little icon with a curvy thing with 2 dots on there. That's the bend tool. So if I click on that, then when I mouse over my corners, I get these little handlebars that allow me to change the curvature of my shape. So if I mess with this long enough, I should be able to turn this into, for example, a wave. This isn't a surfing site, but You still have to play with your own shape. Alright. I'm getting closer. So as I'm messing with this a little bit, eventually I get to where I can do something that looks like maybe an ocean wave. So with those handlebars, you can make all kinds of freeform shapes. You can also overlay shapes to create some shape that you're interested in. So if I was going to create a wrench, I need to click Done up there first to get out of this edit mode. All right, for my what?
How'd you get to that mode again?
So I double click on a shape, and then there's that bend tool that I can mouse
Oh, yeah.
over.
Okay.
And then when I'm done, I have to click Done. If I wanted to make, for example, a wrench, I could go down here, create a circle. Then I will do my Alt or Option feature, create 2 circles, connect them with a rectangle. And then I will use a white box to make cutouts and create my wrench. So I'm going to do another rectangle. I'm going to change its fill color to white. So if I go off of it a little bit, it starts to look like what I want. So I'm going to copy paste this, move it to the other side, and now I've made a wrench. So since we've got some additional time, I'll do some other facts for you here. I'm going to create another frame, and I'm going to make it a desktop frame. So I've got another background. I'm actually going to move my wrench and these 2 shapes. I'm going to try and I'm going to move them over to this other page. And this is where I'm going to be creating all of my shapes. I'm going to zoom in on this. Right now, if I were to click on it, it's just a bunch of disparate shapes. And so if I try to drag it, I might accidentally drag off one of my important components. So if I circle the whole thing, if I circle just the wrench and I do Control G, that should put them into a group. So now they've been grouped. So now I can just move this thing around as a wrench. And sometimes you need to create things that you're going to use as a visual interface item in lots of different pages. And so in this case, we call it creating a component. If we turn this into a component, then it becomes kind of like your class of which you make instances from. So I've got my wrench highlighted here. I'm going to say, I'm going to click on this icon right there that says Create Component. So I click on it, and having done that, it's now purple. But if I go over here to Layers, and I click on Assets, and I open this up, it knows all the components that I've created as part of my project. So I can actually drag this guy from up there onto other pages. It's reusable now. And if I were to go back to my original component, this is the source of truth. If I were to change its color to something else, let's just say make it red, or part of it red, then that gets reflected everywhere throughout the application. So by creating a page which is all of your components, then you can very quickly change the style of your entire application. And that would still work even if I resize these. If I made tiny ones and much bigger ones, it's still going to do the same thing. I can pick different colors, and even though they've been sized differently, they pick up all the color formatting from my component. Okay, given that, take the next 5 minutes to build whatever you want, and then we will have a failed project presentation. So my preference would be, try and design out some interfaces that relate to your project that you're going to be turning in. These could end up making it into the appendix portion of your project. When you're done, take a screenshot of what you've created, post it into Word, and upload that as your assignment for today so that you do not have homework. So have fun for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I suddenly realized I want to see this. I want to see this turned into a website, right? And then I hit play. Okay. Oh well. Okay. Just a screenshot of your working canvas. The little pictures you're making. Anything you did today or something new in the next 2 minutes.
Oh, this They said big kids. No, not big kids. It's a cloud.
The first startup I worked for, I started my salary at $65,000 a year. The two guys sitting in the graphic design room playing video games half the time, their starting was about $75,000 a year. So they got paid more money to draw pictures during the day and play video games half the day than I did as a programmer. So don't be a hater. There's all kinds of different jobs out there, and they can all be great.
If you can't beat us, join them.
If you can't beat them, join them. Absolutely.
While you're teaching us UI design.
That's right. Just so you're aware. But you'll note that about me. It seems like I was always jealous of every other job. I'm like, wait, what? The designers are getting paid more than me? What? That project manager who only asked me if I could put a yellow button on a page, he's getting paid more than me? Like all these different things. I'm like, man, I'm in the wrong job. I want to be the guy that's doing that stuff. Well, it's all good stuff though. Who are our failed project group? Where are you guys at today? Yeah, you got a few minutes. Just this page, the different stuff you had there. You can even do multiple pages if you're proud. Cool. Okay, it's about that time, so field project presenters, come on up.
Okay. All right, so our failed project presentation is on the Mars Climate Orbiter Mission. We've taken the liberty of creating the acronym of MOM, the Mars Orbiter Mission. So our group is Group 13, and we're Sunny Yang, Anita Wu, Victoria Black, Dakota Oric, and I'm Brandon Navarro. So the Mars Climate Orbiter was NASA's 13th mission to Mars, and it was supposed to be the first weather observer on a different planet in NASA's history. The $125 million climate orbiter combusted just as it was entering the planet's atmosphere when it got up to Mars.
Yeah, so when and where, so it was successfully launched on December 11, 1998, and it all seems working really well until 5 minutes after the orbiter start to insert the orbit on September 23, 1999, they lose contact with the orbiter. And what happened?
So even from the initial launch, the orbiter had 10 times the amount of self-trajectory correction procedures that were going on. They kind of knew something was up. But when the orbiter did reach the Mars orbit, it was much closer to the planet than originally planned, and it burned up within the atmospheric friction that was there. And something cool is the remains of the orbiter still have not been found, so could be conspiracy, you know.
And the reason that caused this failure was because of the difference between the units they use between the ground software developed by Lockheed Martin versus the software interface and the orbiter developed by NASA. So Lockheed Martin, they use the United States Customary Unit, but the NASA, they use SI units, which caused the discrepancy between two calculations, the numbers, which actually two navigators, they found out these issues and they reported to NASA, but they eventually like ignored this issue because they said these two navigators didn't follow the process of filling out proper forms. And besides, NASA really didn't do much of the checks and balance in the process of develop this software and like doing this project.
So obviously there's problems in the testing phase or implementation phase. If they could be more careful and test out all the code and use that form, they should and avoid this failure.
So these guys were building rocket ships, Mars orbiter. They were doing some intense math. You'd think they'd be able to do some simple unit conversions. So you think, how often does this happen? I'm sure most of the time people get unit conversions right. So we kind of looked into some other examples of when unit conversions went wrong. So just a year before, NASA lost another huge project because of conversion problems. And then we have Tokyo Disneyland Space Mountain. They had a conversion problem when they were ordering a new part, a new axle. They got the English, they got their parts from America, and so this happened. It's not good. So yeah, this simple part that was not right caused the roller coaster to go flying in the air, and then no, there wasn't. There were people injured, but no one died. So yeah.
I don't know if that's the real image.
That's the only image I could find. I guess it's pretty bad that this happened. And then I have just some other examples. There was Air Canada had a plane, and it was the first time they were using metric system, but they checked twice. They had two. They had their check, and then they had their double check, and they still failed to make the right metric conversion. They thought they had double the amount of fuel that they did, and they ran out of fuel mid-flight, so that was pretty bad. And then there's this example of when a doctor gave 0.5 grams instead of 0.5 grains of this sedative, so the doctor might have had out to get for the patient. I don't know, I thought this little graphic maybe explains it, but pretty much metric conversions are important. Okay, so yeah, metric conversions, even though it's so simple, and there's all these things in projects, and it's just the little details, like a small semicolon, and it can just throw so much off. So, yeah.
Thank you.